This is one of the most remarkable feats in the history of warfare. In 1994, Rwanda experienced one of the worst genocides in history, where members of its supermajority Hutu ethnic group engaged in a pre-planned slaughter of members of its minority Tutsi population. But just before the slaughter of the Tutsis began, 600 Tutsi rebels of the 3rd Battalion of the Rwandan Patriotic Army, who had been invited to peace talks by the Hutu majority government, suddenly found themselves trapped deep within enemy territory, completely cut off and surrounded by 30,000 Hutu soldiers and militia. The Hutu forces immediately descended on the 600 rebels, expecting to easily overwhelm them. But despite being outnumbered by 50 to 1, the 600 rebels had one thing the Hutu forces lacked, and that was discipline. These rebels established a small defensive pocket deep within enemy lines and fought back like crazy, beating back attack after attack coming from all sides. And despite being short on supplies themselves, they soon started taking in and providing safety and medical assistance to thousands of civilians fleeing the mass slaughter by the Hutu forces. For 3 days, the besieged rebels miraculously stood their ground until they were reinforced by a brigade of 2,000 rebel soldiers. But instead of all the rebels now breaking out and escaping with their lives, they realized that they were the only hope left for the tens of thousands of civilians facing certain death in the hands of the Hutu soldiers and militia, who had already butchered hundreds of thousands of Tutsis and Hutus who were opposed to the killings. The 600 rebels and their reinforcements then assumed the new mission of rescuing as many civilians as possible. So they divided their small force into 3. 1 to defend the base, 1 to rescue civilians, and 1 to deal with the humanitarian nightmare of taking care of wounded and traumatized civilians. And the rescue missions they undertook sound like something straight out of a Hollywood movie, as they dispatched small teams of highly trained soldiers, sometimes disguised in enemy uniforms, to engage vastly numerically superior forces and rescue civilians, many of whom were just moments away from being slaughtered. For 3 months, the 600 and their reinforcements successfully held their position against a barrage of attacks while rescuing tens of thousands of civilians. On July 4th, 1994, a larger rebel army overthrew the Hutu majority government, ending the genocide.